collaborators, and some of my and I would like to just list a few of the funders today and to talk about also this project is made in collaboration with my advisor, Dr. Lee Torres, and my co-authors, Dr. Clara Bird and Dr. Casey Bierlick. And of course, they are in support with my committee members, which are Dr. Mauricio Cantor, Dr. Alireza Agassi, and Dr. Andrea Jenny. Oh, sorry, I lost my screen there. Um, Perfect. And so we'll begin. And just a little bit about myself really is that I am originally from California and I attended UC Santa Barbara where I got my bachelor degree in ecology, evolution, and marine biology. And I am very fortunate to have been able to continue my education with a master's in wildlife sciences with Oregon State in 2024 under the advisement of Dr. Lee Torres with the GEM Lab. And the GEM Lab stands for the Geospatial Ecology of Marine Megafauna. And within this lab, I've been able to really experience a plethora of projects. Here on the right are just some of the, is an example of the granite project. Will I go into some detail in a bit later. And an exciting thing about this master's is really been able to hone in on some of my key interests, which are to develop as a mentor and as a teacher for younger scientists, to learn more about marine mammal behavior and the technology that is available to us that we can make the science much more accessible and efficient. And since today we are part of the American Cetacean Society. I know that we're very much familiar with cetaceans, and I thought, what harm could it be to just talk a bit more about our classes of cetaceans, and particularly just some very specific defining characteristics of two of the odontocetes and the mysticetes. Now, like I said, there are several factors that really distinguish these two from each other. Odontocetes are toothed whales, of course, and this is why we typically think of killer whales or sperm whales. But then we also have our mysticetes, which are baleen whales, such as gray and our blue whales. Now, for odontocetes, these have typically strong social structures, correct? They typically are why you think of pods with killer whales, or if you yeah, that have these generational matrilineal lines that last throughout years. Whereas mysticetes are still trying to be investigated and understood, but for right now, they are considered to have more of a looser social structure. And there is research going on to try to see if there's a more descriptive term to really understand the dynamics that are occurring within mysticetes. And odontocetes also typically exhibit alloparental care. And I'm not sure if you've seen on social media, but there's been this really incredible drone footage that's been rising up of a sperm whale giving birth. And in this video, you can really see that it does take a village. You can see like the kin within the sperm whale community really do help create this amazing moment of a birth. Whereas this is not really the case for baleen whales. And in fact, the strongest bond that is believed to be known is the mother-calf pair bond for baleen whales. But how do we even get to this point of the mother-calf pair? Well, first we need to think a bit more about our our baleen reproductive cycle. Now, here on the left, I have a bit of a broad schematic of what the baleen whale reproductive cycle looks like. So we have our point of conception, correct? And this is the point in which a adult female, sexually mature adult female, is fertilized, mates, and is implanted with an offspring. I mean, offspring, yes. And then we move on to the next stage, which is gestation, which is 11 to 12 months, which is absolutely incredible. I thought 9 months was super long for humans, but I can't imagine 11, 12 months, the amount of energy that this takes to really grow. And this is just an example of a gray whale, I mean, the baleen whales being a capital breeder. And then we move on to parturition, which is really just the next stage, which is just giving birth, right? Like the act of actually expunging out a new life into the world. And then we move on to weaning. And weaning only takes place between 6 to 8 months. So this entire cycle really, in optimal conditions, can happen every 2 to 3 years for a sexually mature female. But I really want to hone in this point that the weaning process is quite rapid. And when I talk about weaning, I want to really think about how this can be conceptualized for humans. So, for baleen whales, 6 to 8 months before you're becoming fully independent is absolutely striking. And for human societies, and typical, at least I would say for in American culture, we consider the point in which we become independent and weaned from our parents at 18. Now, I can't imagine being less than 18 and having to think about like my taxes or having no career already and like having to find my own doctor at 60. Like, these time scales are completely different, but super interesting to think about like how like just incredibly rapid that all these kind of sort of things need to be absorbed by this calf before they're released off into the ocean, correct? And weaning, to put it just all into context again, like is an integral part of the entire development of a whale because it constitutes an important phase in the progression to adulthood. This is where these whales are gaining locomotor skills and strength. They're learning foraging techniques and vocalizations and they're practicing diving coordinations, right? Like, for example, like I'm sure all of us, when we were younger, have played the game of like who can hold their breath the longest. And by practicing these kind of before, like the first time you've ever done it, you probably didn't even know how long you can hold your breath underwater, for example. And but with more time, more practice, you begin to understand like, oh, okay, I can only hold my breath for this amount of time, and this helps with my swimming and so forth. And all these essential skills are really important and impact the success of a calf becoming independent and recruiting back into a population and therefore increasing population size. So for today, we'll be exploring two projects with the GEM Lab that are completely different baleen species, but we'll be focusing on this question of weaning and how does this manifest in both of these study systems. So for granite, we have I will also preface and say that with the Gem Lab, we do love to name the projects after gems just because it makes it a lot more fun and why not? So for granite, we have gray whale response to ambient noise informed by technology and ecology. And we also have sapphire, which is the synthesis of acoustics, physiology, prey, and habitat in a rapidly changing environment. So we'll start off with granite. And the focus species of granite is the gray whale, the Aspictus robustus, right? And of course, here in the North America, Pacific, we have our Eastern North Pacific gray whale, which will migrate every year, the highly migratory species that migrate from their foraging grounds to their breeding grounds and just rinse and repeat over and over again. But like we all know on this call, and we're very much privy to the Oregon coast, we have a very lovely and unique subgroup of these whales known as the Pacific Coast Feeding Group of Gray Whales, which consists of about 212 individuals. And what makes them different from the Eastern North Pacific gray whale is the fact that although they do also congregate in the Baja breeding grounds like the Eastern North Pacific gray whale, rather than head all the way up to the Arctic and benthic feed like the Eastern North Pacific gray whale, these Pacific Coast feeding group of gray whales will actually have high site fidelity and just really love our west coast here and will be seen throughout the summer deciding to stay among like this coastal range all the way up to southeast Alaska. So they don't really go as far up to the Arctic as the East North Pacific, and in fact are closer to our coastal range and forage in shallower waters. Now we'll switch hemispheres a little bit and talk about another baleen whale, which is our pygmy blue whale. And this species is located at the South Taranaki Bight of New Zealand and consists of a population of about 718 individuals. Unlike the gray whale, these whales are not migratory and in fact will stay in the South Taranaki Bight year round, which makes them incredibly also unique to study. So let's talk about the gray and the blue whale and how do they fit with that reproductive cycle we mentioned here at the top right. So gray whales, like I mentioned, have give birth in Baja, Mexico, and they can give birth anytime between December to February, with peak months being January to February. Now, for the blue whale, though it's never been witnessed when a blue whale has given birth, by researchers have used old whaling records and acoustic recorders to really pinpoint and put and match this story back up. And it is believed that blue whales, the pygmy blue whales specifically, give birth between April and May. Now, for the next phase in the cycle, we have weaning, correct? Now, weaning takes place 6 to 8 months, like we mentioned. So if we take the fact that the gray whales are born between January to February, and we just go down the timeline of the calendar year, that means that weaning should take place just right at the end of September, maybe early October. And for the pygmy blue whale, if birth takes place between April to May, and we just add on 6 to 8 months, that means that the pygmy blue whale calf should be weaned by the end of February, essentially. And what's really interesting is that for the granite and sapphire field seasons, we are actually uniquely positioned to be able to be immersed at this coinciding timeline. So for the granite field season, we go out of Newport and using like an inflatable, and we go out and observe for gray whales between the months of May to October. Whereas for the Sapphire Project, researchers go out to New Zealand and observe for these pygmy blue whales between January to mid-February. So it really does position us in a very unique position to like be able to potentially be observant of a very unique point in this cycle. So, but what do we currently know about mother-calf relationships of baleen whales? Well, not honestly a lot. And this makes sense, right? It is very difficult to be able to witness mother-calf relationships out in the wild, just like any other like marine mammal research. But we do our best. And current research has been developed to understand that a little bit more about mother-calf relationships of gray whales on their breeding ground because, there's Baja Mexico, it's a bit more accessible. But very little is known about what causes a gray or blue whale to become independent during this next succession in the cycle of weaning, especially as they're on like a foraging ground for the gray whales as they're migrating up north and they're passing through our foraging, their traditional foraging ground. And then the pygmy blue whale that does stay, that doesn't migrate, but it is essentially still a foraging ground as well. Now, as now the question is, how can we really measure independence in a baleen whale? And as much as I would really love to ask the question, how do you become independent to a calf? We know this isn't the case. So, and that's okay because, it gives me a fun job to do and I can't complain. So, there are other things that we must consider to act as a predictor instead of obviously trying to find this answer straightforward. And one method that I think that would be useful to think about this question is really thinking about ourselves. Like when we assess independence in humans, it's not necessarily a straight answer, correct? There are certain behaviors that are conducted and that are witnessed and observed that really promote this sense of independence. And for today, I want to focus on one specific behavior, and we'll start at the point in time of crossing an intersection. So, at some point in our lives, we were presented with the dilemma of having to get from one place to another, having to cross an intersection. And when we were very young, we were dependent on being within a very close distance to our parental guardian, whether it be your mother, your father, your grandparents, whatever parental guardian this was, and maintaining a very close spatial relationship. Whereas today, granted, assuming independence, yes, you are very far distance away whenever you have to cross the street from your parents. Like they're not even in the range anymore. And the spatial relationship is almost non-existent, right? It's not necessary because you're independent and you're able to engage in this behavior all on your own. And some like things that you are learning about while you are dependent and exhibiting this close distance and spatial relationship with your parent are like you're creating this bond with your guardian, right? This is quality time with your parent. And you have this sense of safety because they have the knowledge of what to do in this situation. You also get this protection from threats. For example, you are prevented from having to You are prevented from a car colliding because your parent understands what is when it is safe to be able to cross the street. And all this is encapsulated by a social learning. So you're learning about the crosswalk signals, when to assess when a car is coming, when it obviously is unsafe, when it is safe again. And these are all parameters that you're learning while you are still in close distance and having a very close spatial relationship with your parent. Now, for marine mammals specifically, proximity and like spatial relationships has is a tactic that we can see very similarly. Oh, sorry. In fact, proximity has been shown to nourish the strong bond between the mother and calf. But having being within a close spatial relationship does protect the calf from threats like killer whales and potentially like anthropogenic disturbances like ships and whatnot, and it promotes social learning, like I mentioned. So by looking at spatial relationships, we can actually use this as a predictor for calf independence. And for my thesis work, we actually are looking at three different types of spatial relationships, but one being this leave and approach theory that has been evident in harbor porpoise mother calf pairs, the theory of hider follower in humpback whale mother calves, and blow synchrony, which is prevalent in bottlenose dolphin mother calf research. For the sake of time today, we will be focusing on blow synchrony and how this can be applied to our baleen whales. So in most delphinids, mother calves become asynchronous as a calf becomes independent, because this essentially would mean that the calf has been able, because has reached a point to become independent and make certain decisions on its own and isn't reliant on its mother to dive or what trajectory to go onto, right? Now, this is an example here on the left of like a synchronous behavior. Um, when both of mother and calf surface and blow relatively at the same time. And here on the right is an example of asynchronous behavior. For example, if the mother blows and then the calf like blows like right after or soon, like many with much time in between. Now, this like synchronous and asynchronous behavior is of course going to be affected by age. Now, again, like when we're observing these whales, we can't, there are certain things we don't necessarily know, like how old they are exactly at some point in time. But age does have an effect in behavior because if we go back to the crossing the intersection, when you were three, this crossing the intersection will have looked different versus when you were 5 or 6, correct? So instead, since we don't have this age under like exact metric, we will use different variables to act as a proxy for age instead. And some age potential like proxies are that are being used are day of year. So day in that timeline that I mentioned earlier. How far into that timeline of the weaning timeline are they, and how what is that moment? Total length, which can be thought of as like kind of like height in humans. Like when we're three, again, we're very tiny, but then when we're 18, we're fully formed. So height. And BAI is a body area index. It's very similar to BMI, which is just a representative of body condition. Because one would imagine that a calf with a higher body condition would mean that it's ingesting enough like lactation and milk from its mother and getting enough energy reserves and becoming chubbier, therefore healthier, and just another representation of age. Okay, so what is our hypothesis then for today? For hypothesis, we believe or anticipate that as day of year and calf total length and body area index, body condition, increases, mother and calf surfacing intervals will also become asynchronous with time. Okay, and then this is just an example of how we exactly get the proxies for calf age. So day of year is really just when we see the calf and we mark down like exactly the day of year that we saw. And total length is and body area index are both metrics that are taken from photogrammetry methods using drones. And drones have been a phenomenal tool in this field, and I'm sure you're all very much aware that drones provide a really unique angle in terms that's very different from traditional boat surveys alone, because from traditional boat surveys you're getting like a 2D version or one perspective version of what's going on with these whales, but drones offer a really like aerial point of view that will allow to understanding of what's going on in the water and just a different perspective. And drones are popularized and being able and research it has been shown to, to show pregnancy rates or indicate pregnancy rates, changes in foraging tactics. And for today, we'll be focusing on behavior and exploring how we can use drones to understand more about synchronous mother-calf behavior. So here is our data set. It sounds like a lot, it looks like a lot, but we'll walk through it together. So here on the top is our timeline again. So we have our gray whales on top that are giving birth and then our weaning period, our timeline. And in this yellow portion here is the fieldwork seasons of granite. And again, for the blue whale, weaning period, and then our latter like stretch for the field season is January to February, and that's when we're observing these whales. And this is our data set of the different types of videos that we've been able to collect from both of these projects, with each of these circles being a different year and the IDs of the mother calf pairings coinciding with it. So what's interesting is that for our gray whales, we've been able to observe a variety of different mother calf pairs between the months of June to August, but coincides here, June to August, and blue whales between January and middle February, which coincides again with our field season here. Okay, ultimately, for this specific question, we only used 5 mother calf gray whale pairs and 4 mother calf blue whale pairs. And what are we doing with these videos? So with these videos, we are using a program otherwise known as Boris, which is a behavior annotation software. So we put in these videos into Boris, and with the help of an intern, together we created this project of essentially marking every time the mother and the calf surface and create a breath. Just as an example of, so for example, let's say that like the mother just blew, we would mark, okay, at this time frame in the video, the mother blew, and then the calf blew, mark the time frame. And within each of these surfacing intervals, we took the difference in time between the two of them. And with this, how this ties back into a hypothesis is that as we imagine that as we said, as day of year total length and BAI increases, that the calf would become more asynchronous, therefore becoming more independent. So if the difference in time between the mother and the calf increases, that would mean that hopefully, that would imply that the calf is becoming asynchronous from the mother and is no longer tying its surfacing intervals with the mother, correct? So, I just went over the hypothesis. But here are some results. So on the x-axis, I have our 3 proxies for age, average total length, average BAI, and the day of year of the sighting. On the y-axis, I have the average difference of the breath rate that was taken per mother-calf pair. And each of these points are calves, where the circles are blue whales and the gray are triangles. Oh my God, sorry. And for today, we're going to be focusing on these 2 results that provide a significant effect. And so for the blue whales, we found that as the blue whales calves increase in total length, they also increase in the difference in breath intervals, right? And therefore becoming more asynchronous. Whereas for the calves, it's a very different story. Rather, it's as the BAI, the body condition of the gray whales increases, so does their difference in timing, and therefore becoming more asynchronous. Now you might be asking, like, why is there such a like difference between blue and gray whales if they're both baleen whales? Shouldn't they essentially have similar results? But for this, one potential explanation for this could be due to the physiology of blue and gray whales and their differences there. Blue whales are typically longer and relatively skinnier for their surface area. So perhaps total length is more indicative of when a calf is ready to be weaned versus for the gray whales are shorter and a bit stockier and higher in body condition. So perhaps body condition is just more relevant to this specific species. Um, great. So final thoughts, the true takeaway. If you ever feel like you're lacking independence, just remember you can cross the street all by yourself now. And as much as this would be a fun final thought, it's not exactly the key takeaway. Rather, we understood that weaning is a critical period for calf to develop and to eventually what eventually what shapes the calf coming into a population and increasing population size, correct? But we can't exactly we not like little research has been known about what drives this weaning act. And so instead, we have to study certain other metrics, such as behavior, to be able to infer independence in these whales, in marine mammals, and in wildlife. And below synchrony is just one behavior that we can really infer and try to understand more about calf development and how it can act as an indicator for whether it is becoming independent. But yes, thank you so much. And obviously, science is nothing without community and collaboration. And I am incredibly thankful for ACS for the research grant being in 2025 and for their support in my research as well. And I would be happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you so much, Celeste. This is very interesting. Um, Folks can feel free to unmute and ask questions, or you can put them in the chat.
On Celeste. A lot of times in the when we're starting to see mom and calves coming by, even the migration out a little further, uh, there are times we see the blow probably within a second. There's a difference,
Mm.
maybe just a second. Would you consider that asynchronous or synchronous?
I think no, that's a great question. And ultimately, nature isn't perfect, right? We don't it's not like there it's very hard to get a perfect interval, yes, or perfect synchrony. So I believe there should be some sort of standard error, which I should have mentioned that further in the plots, but there is some standard error that is presented among the baleen whales and their surfacing intervals. I wouldn't consider like a second difference to be completely asynchronous. I think it would be more if it was more than 5 seconds, for example.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Uh, Nancy has a question on Marine Science Day. What time does this start? Does anyone know?
Oh, I think Nancy's question was about Marine Science Day. I think that was from
Yes,
earlier.
it was. Yeah, the April 11th Hatfield Marine Science Day that was free. I was just wondering what was it as soon as they open or
I think it's 10 o'clock.
okay.
I think that's what's listed on their website.
Okay, great. Thanks. And thanks for the presentation, Celeste.
Thank you
Enjoyed it.
so much. Thank you.
I have a question not really related to the presentation, sorry, but
No, no, that's
about
good.
about pygmy blue whales. So the population that's I know Chile has pygmy blue whales, at least I believe they do. Is
Yeah.
that population different from the New Zealand pygmy blue whales? Do you know?
That's a great question. I'm not too familiar with the pygmy blue whales in Chile, but I'm not sure. That's a great question.
I guess
Uh,
since the New Zealand ones don't migrate, I mean, there must be some differences, but
Right, absolutely, yes. Because the pygmy blue whales, from my understanding, in New Zealand are one of the only documented blue whales that do not migrate and actually are unique in the fact that they stay
oh,
year-round resident in the STV.
yeah,
That is a difference there. But
yeah.
yeah, I should
Thank
read
you.
more about the pygmy blue whales in Chile. That'd be super interesting.
Thanks.
Of course.
Any other questions?
I hope I didn't lose you guys. Sorry.
No, no, great job, Celeste. Great job.
Thank you so much, Era. Thank you.
Well, if there's no other question, I want to thank you so much.
Thanks,
And
Celeste.
Thank you.
it's great to see the beginning of your work. And I hope that in the future you'll be able to see some more results as you progress along.
Yes, absolutely. I'm set to defend in June. So there's this is we're on the countdown, and I would love to send like any kind of defense. If anyone's ever interested in learning more about the mother calf like relationship, I'd love to send that defend link and invite you to come as well. It's open to the public,
Do you
and
have a
I'm really
date?
excited about it.
Do you have a date in June?
We're still deciding. It's supposed to be June. If anyway, I forgot what it meant that there was an event mentioned earlier, but either the 24th or the 25th of June. Um, is what we're trying to decide on for my committee members, what works best with their schedule.
I look
But
forward
yeah,
to it.
thank you so much.
And if you send me the link, I can send it out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joy. Thank you.
I
All
think
right.
you can enjoy the rest of this beautiful day.
It is quite beautiful, yes. Well, thank you so much for having me and again for this research grant. It really has been such a lift for my research and I can't explain more how grateful I am. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And have a good rest of your day, everyone. And hopefully we see you at Marine Science Day or at Dolphin Day.
Bye. Yes, I'll be there Marine Science Day. Please come say hi.
Thanks again.
I shall do that.